Revenge Girls Stories.
My name is Auriemina, and I am 32 years old. As I sat at my parents' dining table watching my sister Celise soak up praise for landing a tiny role on a Netflix show, I felt invisible. The same feeling that had followed me since childhood. For years, I had been silently transferring money to keep their house from foreclosure while they thought Celise was their savior. Then my mom said the words that made something inside me snap. Before I tell you how my family's perfect facade crumbled that night, drop a comment letting me know if you have ever been the unappreciated backbone of your family. And subscribe to hear more stories about finding your voice. Growing up in suburban Denver, my childhood home was a place where appearances mattered more than reality. My parents, Carson and Remy, created a world where success was measured by trophies and applause. Unfortunately for me, my practical nature and analytical mind never quite fit their definition of achievement. Celise arrived 2 years after me, and from the moment she could walk and talk, she commanded attention. Where I was reserved and thoughtful, Celise was bold and dramatic. By age 7, she was performing in living room plays she wrote herself with my parents as her captive, adoring audience. I would be recruited to handle the lights or move props, always the support crew, never the star. My father worked as the principal of the local middle school, respected in our community for his leadership and dedication. Mom sold insurance part-time, focusing more on being available for Celise's performances and auditions. They were not wealthy, but comfortable and deeply invested in creating the image of the perfect American family. In high school, I found my strength in academics. Math and economics made sense to me in a way people sometimes did not. I joined the debate team and academic decathlon, winning state competitions and scholarships. My report cards were perfect rows of A grades. My parents would nod with minimal acknowledgement, then quickly shift the conversation to Celise's latest drama club triumph. For Celise's 8th grade musical, my parents invited extended family and neighbors, purchasing flowers and organizing a small reception afterward. When I was named valedictorian, they simply said, "Well, that was expected, was it not?" No celebration, no recognition that I had worked every bit as hard as Celise did for her accomplishments. College decision time brought the differences into sharper focus. I chose to study finance at State University, earning a substantial merit scholarship. Celise, with her B- average but impressive audition, was accepted into a prestigious arts program 3,000 miles away in California. My parents took out a second mortgage on the house to afford her tuition and housing. Celise has a special gift, my father explained when I questioned the financial decision. "We have to nurture that. You will be fine no matter where you go." He was right about one thing. I was fine. I graduated summa cum laude in 3.5 years instead of 4, saving money and immediately securing a position at a respected investment firm in Phoenix. Meanwhile, Celise stretched her degree to 5 years with my parents covering the extra expenses. After graduation, Celise moved to Los Angeles to make it big, as she always said. Her actual jobs were table waiting and occasional commercial work, but from my parents' updates, you would think she was on the verge of an Academy Award. Every callback was celebrated, every tiny non-speaking role in a television show was treated like a starring role in a blockbuster. Celise met the lead actor from that police show yesterday. He said she has real presence. It is only a matter of time. Then she would rush through obligatory questions about my life. My promotion to senior analyst was met with a quick, "That is nice, dear," before pivoting back to Celise's adventures. 6 years ago, everything changed for my parents. The school district faced major budget cuts, and my father was essentially forced into early retirement with a package that was far less generous than expected. Simultaneously, the insurance market became increasingly competitive, decimating my mother's client base. Their comfortable financial situation unraveled quickly. I discovered the severity of their situation during a rare visit home. While my parents were out picking up dinner, I noticed past due mortgage notices on my father's desk. They were 3 months behind and facing potential foreclosure. Next to the notices was a letter from Celise asking for money to cover her rent in Los Angeles. That night, I transferred $4,000 to my father's account. When he mentioned the banking error the next day, I said nothing. A month later, I set up an automatic transfer of $1,100 monthly. Over time, as their expenses increased and property taxes rose, I gradually increased the amount to $1,500. For 6 years, I continued these payments, never telling them I was the source. It was complicated by the story they began telling family members that Celise was supporting them with her Hollywood money. At family gatherings, they would praise Celise's generosity, while I sat silently knowing it was my money keeping them afloat. Celise's success has been such a blessing, my mother once told my Aunt Margaret at Thanksgiving, within my earshot. She makes sure we are taken care of. The irony burned, but I said nothing. Part of me felt obligated to help my parents who, despite their favoritism, had still provided for me growing up. Another part felt a bitter resentment growing. I was succeeding in the ways they had taught me to value: education, financial stability, responsible planning. Yet none of it seemed to matter compared to Celise's occasional commercial or 2 lines on a cable show. As months turned into years, the financial burden became heavier. I had passed up opportunities for travel, delayed buying my own home, and lived far more frugally than my income required, all to ensure my parents kept their house and lifestyle. Meanwhile, Celise's social media showed her at exclusive restaurants, on beach vacations, and at Hollywood parties. My parents never questioned how she managed this lifestyle while supposedly supporting them. The resentment grew quietly, like interest compounding in an account no one monitors. I began to dread holidays and family gatherings, knowing I would once again be relegated to the shadows of Celise's imagined success. But I continued the payments month after month, telling myself it was the right thing to do. Occasionally, I would try to offer actual financial advice to help my parents become more self-sufficient, but these suggestions were always dismissed. "We do not need financial lectures, Auriemina," my mother would say. "We have managed just fine all these years." The irony of the statements was never acknowledged. By my calculations, over the 6 years, I had contributed over $80,000 to my parents' household expenses, money they believed came from Celise, money that had prevented foreclosure, paid property taxes, covered medical bills, and even funded home repairs. And yet, whenever I visited, Celise's childhood achievements still lined the mantel and walls. My academic awards were stored in boxes in the attic. It was as if my contributions, both financial and personal, simply did not register on my parents' scale of success. The breaking point came with unexpected swiftness. Last month, my father had what he called a minor dizzy spell, but which landed him in the emergency room for 6 hours of tests. The medical bills arrived just as their property taxes were due. I sent an additional $2,000 without hesitation, money I had been saving for a down payment on my own apartment. 2 weeks later, I saw Celise's Instagram post from Cabo San Lucas, cocktail in hand, designer sunglasses reflecting the ocean. The caption read, "Sometimes you just need to treat yourself. Grateful for this life." That same week, my mother called with exciting news. Celise landed 3 episodes on that new Netflix show. "We are having a family dinner to celebrate this Saturday. Be here by 5. No question about my availability, no acknowledgement of the 4-hour drive it would require from Phoenix to Denver, and certainly no awareness that I had an important client presentation that same morning. I had learned long ago not to expect accommodation for my schedule. Celise's career always took precedence, even when it was my money funding the celebrations. I rescheduled what I could, delivered my presentation flawlessly, and hit the road immediately after, determined to be supportive despite the familiar knots forming in my stomach. The drive gave me time to think about the conversation I had been avoiding with myself for months. How much longer could I sustain this financial drain? How much longer could I watch my sister take credit for my sacrifices while my own life remained on hold? I arrived at exactly 4:55, already seeing the driveway filled with extended family cars. Aunt Margaret's SUV took the prime spot near the door, Uncle Paul's sedan was parked along the curb, and several of my cousins' vehicles filled the remaining spaces. I had to park a block away, walking briskly in the October chill to avoid being late. Music and laughter spilled from the house as I entered without knocking, our family custom since childhood. In the living room, a scene straight from my childhood unfolded. Celeste stood in the center, gesturing dramatically as she regaled everyone with a story. My cousins Diana and Marcus sat enraptured while Aunt Margaret nodded enthusiastically. Uncle Paul laughed heartily, his booming voice filling the room. Celeste paused mid-sentence when she saw me, her expression flickering briefly before stretching into a wide smile. Auriemina, you made it! She bounded across the room for a quick hug that smelled of expensive perfume, then immediately returned to her story. My mother emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dishcloth. Auriemina, you are right on time for once. The subtle critique was not lost on me. She gave me a quick pat on the shoulder, the closest she came to physical affection with me, while reserving her embraces for Celeste. Come meet Gavin, Celeste called, gesturing to a tall, well-dressed man I had not noticed before. My new boyfriend. He works in finance too, so you will actually have something to talk about. Gavin stepped forward, extending his hand with a genuine smile. Nice to meet you, Auriemina. Celeste has told me about her successful sister in Phoenix. The compliment surprised me, as did his firm handshake and direct eye contact. Most of Celeste's boyfriends tended to be as self-absorbed as she was, but Gavin seemed different. As we exchanged pleasantries, I took in the living room, noticing the new furniture and recently painted walls. The hardwood floors had been refinished, and built-in bookshelves now framed the fireplace, where once there had been plain drywall. Renovations that had likely been funded by my monthly transfers, though no one in this room knew that, except my father and possibly not even him entirely. Uncle Paul approached, drink in hand. Auriemina, good to see you. How was the money business? Before I could answer, he launched into a detailed account of his own business troubles. The construction industry is brutal these days. I'm thinking about restructuring some debt. Any free advice for your old uncle? He laughed, but I could tell the question was genuine. As I began offering some general suggestions, I overheard my mother talking to Aunt Margaret near the window. Celeste has been so generous with her success, she was saying in a hushed but audible tone. We could never have done the kitchen renovation without her help. My hand tightened around my water glass. The kitchen renovation had happened 4 months ago, right after I had sent an extra $3,000 when my father mentioned their refrigerator was failing. My cousins Diana and Marcus wandered over, both looking bored now that Celeste was occupied with Gavin. So, you still doing that banking thing? Diana asked, scrolling through her phone as she spoke. Investment analysis, I corrected mildly. Just got promoted to senior portfolio manager, actually. Cool, Marcus said with zero interest. Did you hear Celeste might be in a movie next year? She said some director saw her Netflix scenes and wants to meet with her. Before I could respond, my mother called me into the kitchen. The newly renovated space gleamed with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. The farmhouse sink I had listened to my mother dream about for years was finally installed, along with the custom cabinet she had shown me in magazines. You could have worn something nicer, she said by way of greeting, eyes critically scanning my business attire from my morning presentation. And have you gained weight? That jacket looks tight. I came straight from work, Mom, I explained, choosing to ignore the weight comment. Had a big presentation today. Actually, I was presenting our new investment strategy to the board of directors. They approved it, and I will be leading a 20-person project team. She responded, turning back to the stove where she stirred Salisa's favorite pasta dish. Can you take these rolls to the table and tell everyone dinner is in 5 minutes? As I arranged the rolls in the bread basket, I noticed my father's desk in the corner of the adjoining office. Bills were stacked neatly beside the computer, and I could see the edge of a bank statement peeking out from beneath a folder. My stomach tightened as I recognized the account number. My father entered the office, stopping short when he saw me. "Auriemina, you made it." His expression held something my mother lacked, a trace of guilt. "Hi, Dad," I said softly. An awkward moment passed between us. He seemed about to say something significant when my mother called from the kitchen. "Carson, bring the wine glasses." The moment broken, he nodded and moved to the cabinet collecting glasses without meeting my eyes again. I had learned to read the signs over the years. The slight tremor in his hands, the way he avoided direct conversation with me, the guilty glances. He knew exactly where their financial stability was coming from, even if he had never acknowledged it directly. We gathered around the dining table, which had been extended to accommodate everyone. Celise was given the seat of honor beside our parents, while I sat between Uncle Paul and my cousin Marcus, directly opposite from Gavin. The table was set with the good china, the kind reserved for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Fresh flowers formed an elaborate centerpiece, and candles flickered in polished silver holders that had belonged to my grandmother. The stage was set for what would become the most explosive family dinner of my life. But first, there would be toasts, stories, and the familiar ritual of celebrating Celise while I remained invisible. Little did anyone know that tonight would be different. Tonight, the truth would finally come out, and nothing would ever be the same again. I noticed my father's hands trembling slightly as he poured wine into each glass. He had lost weight since I had last seen him, and the shadows under his eyes spoke of sleepless nights. For a moment, my resentment faltered, replaced by genuine concern. Whatever their flaws, these were still my parents, growing older, facing the vulnerabilities of aging. It was why I had started the payments in the first place. But as my mother beamed adoringly at Celise, adjusting her napkin for her as if she were still a child, the familiar ache returned. I had never known that kind of doting attention from her, not even when I was small. I took a large sip of wine, preparing for the evening ahead. "A toast," my father announced, raising his glass once everyone was seated. "To Celise and her big break. We always knew you would make it, sweetheart." Everyone raised their glasses, murmuring congratulations. I joined in, genuinely happy for my sister despite everything else. Creative success had been her dream since childhood, and I knew how hard the entertainment industry could be. "Tell everyone about the role," my mother prompted, practically glowing with pride. Celise set down her glass with a dramatic flourish. "Well, it started with this absolutely grueling audition process. 8 callbacks. Can you believe it? The director said I was the only one who really understood the emotional core of the character." She launched into an elaborate tale of her audition triumphs, describing in detail how she had impressed various industry executives. According to her story, she had beaten out actresses who had been on major shows, thanks to her unique interpretation of the character. "And how many episodes will you be in?" I asked during a brief pause, genuinely curious. "3 guaranteed, but the showrunner hinted it could become more if the audience responds well." "Which they will, obviously." I smiled and nodded, then added, "That is great, Celise. Really exciting." "Anyway," she continued, barely acknowledging my comment, "the filming schedule is so demanding. 5 a.m. call times, sometimes shooting until midnight. The glamorous part is what people see on screen. But let me tell you, the struggle is real." I took another sip of wine, thinking about my own 5 a.m. starts to prepare for market opening, the late nights analyzing portfolios, the weekends spent catching up on financial reports. But those were just jobs, not careers worthy of dinner time stories in our family. And the pay is ridiculous. You pour your heart into these roles and they expect you to live on practically nothing. If I did not have my commercial work on the side, I do not know how I would survive in LA. I nearly choked on my wine. Celise's commercial work was sporadic at best, certainly not enough to support her lifestyle of designer clothes and trendy restaurants that she documented extensively on social media, and definitely not enough to be sending substantial sums to our parents as they believed. When I tried to join the conversation with a question about the show's premise, Aunt Margaret inadvertently spoke over me, asking Celise about the famous actors she would be working with. The moment passed, and I returned to my pasta, listening as Celise name-dropped several celebrities she had allegedly met in passing. Midway through dinner, my father excused himself briefly, returning with a small, wrapped box that he placed beside Celise's plate with ceremonial care. "Your mother and I wanted to give you something to commemorate your first recurring role," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Celise gasped dramatically as she unwrapped the package, revealing a sleek watch with the mother-of-pearl face. "Oh my God! Is this the one I showed you at the mall? This is like a $1,000 watch." "We saved for months," my mother said proudly. "You deserve something special to mark this milestone." I stared at my plate, heat rising to my face. The watch purchase coincided with the month in which I had sent an extra $800 after my father mentioned unexpected medical bills. I had canceled a spa weekend with friends to afford that extra money. "Speaking of special things," Uncle Paul said, gesturing around the dining room, "the house looks amazing. You finally did all those renovations you've been talking about for years." "The kitchen is a dream," my mother replied, "and having the hardwood floors redone has made such a difference." "It was getting embarrassing having people over with the house falling apart," Celise added casually. "I'm glad it all worked out." The implication that she had something to do with it all working out hung in the air. I set down my fork, carefully focusing on keeping my expression neutral. "Auriemina mentioned she received a promotion," Gavin said suddenly, looking directly at me. "Senior portfolio manager, right? That's impressive at your age." A brief, surprised silence followed, before my mother said, "Yes, Auriemina works for an investment firm. Very steady job." She turned immediately to Celise. "Tell everyone about the director who might consider you for the feature film." As Celise launched into another story, I caught Gavin watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Curiosity, perhaps, or something like recognition.
"So, Auriemina," Aunt Margaret said during a lull, "any special someone in your life these days? Your biological clock is not getting any younger, you know." She laughed as if she had said something original and funny. Before I could answer, Celise jumped in. "Auriemina only dates these super serious, uptight financial types. I keep telling her she needs someone who will help her loosen up and actually enjoy life." "I enjoy my life," I said quietly but firmly. Celise rolled her eyes. "You work 60-hour weeks and probably have a color-coded system for your sock drawer." "There is nothing wrong with being organized," I countered. "See what I mean?" Celise said to the table at large. "So serious. I have this friend in the production department, Jason, who might be perfect for you. He is a bit more fun than your usual type." The conversation shifted to Celise's extensive social network and her apparent prowess as a matchmaker. I tuned out, taking the opportunity to refill my water glass. "The housing market is finally recovering," Uncle Paul commented to my father. "You must be relieved, especially with retirement. Though I have to say, you seem to be doing well for yourselves. New renovations, nice gifts." He raised his eyebrows questioningly. My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair, while my mother jumped in smoothly.
We have been fortunate with some investments paying off. She deliberately avoided looking in my direction. I always tell them real estate is the way to go, Celise said confidently. Buy when the market is down, sell when it is up. Basic principles. I bit my tongue, remembering the long conversations I had with my father about diversifying their retirement accounts, advice he had politely listened to but never implemented. Now, Celise was dispensing financial wisdom she had likely heard on a podcast, and my parents were nodding as if she were Warren Buffett. Celise has always had a good head for these things, my mother added. Even as a child, she understood value. Uncle Paul looked skeptical, but said nothing. I noticed my cousin Diana smirking slightly, perhaps sensing the inconsistency. Remember when the housing crash hit and things were tight for a while? Celise said, touching my father's arm sympathetically. I'm just glad I was in a position to help out. Family first, always. My chest tightened as I watched my parents nod gratefully at Celise. 6 years of my sacrifices were being casually claimed by my sister, who had never contributed a cent to their welfare. The tension in my body was becoming physical. A clenched jaw, white knuckles around my water glass, a dull ache spreading across my shoulders. Gavin must have noticed my discomfort because he tried to steer the conversation elsewhere. I understand you were a school principal, Carson. That must have been rewarding work. It was, my father began, seemingly relieved by the subject change, but Celise interrupted. Dad was the best principal ever. Everyone loved him. I used to visit his office after school, and all the teachers would say I had his charisma. That is probably why I'm good with directors now. I learned those people skills early. Gavin tried again. Auriemina mentioned you have been doing some consulting work since retirement. Just a little career counseling at the community college. Nothing as exciting as Hollywood, he added, smiling at Celise. I felt a growing pressure in my chest, like a balloon slowly inflating beyond capacity. Every dismissal, every redirection, every moment of Celise taking credit for things she had not done, all of it was building towards something I could not yet name, but could feel approaching with the inevitability of a storm. Honestly, Auriemina, Celise said, twirling pasta around her fork, you should consider scaling back your hours. Life is not all about work and saving money. Look at me. I may not make as much as you do with your fancy finance job, but I actually enjoy my life. I took a slow, deliberate sip of water before responding. We all make different choices. That is not a choice. That is a default setting, Celise laughed. Seriously, when was the last time you did something spontaneous? Took a vacation? Took an adventure? My mother nodded in agreement. Celise has always known how to live in the moment. You've always been so serious, so focused on the future. Even as a little girl, you were saving your allowance while Celise was using hers to put on neighborhood plays. Some of us have responsibilities, I said sharply than I intended. We all have responsibilities, Celise countered. I have auditions, lines to memorize, networking events, but I make time for joy. That is the difference. Celise has always been so good at balancing work and pleasure, and she still manages to be there for family. That takes emotional intelligence. I set down my glass carefully. Different kinds of intelligence are valuable. Of course they are, dear. Now, Celise, tell us more about the potential film opportunity. The words that would change everything were building in my throat like a scream waiting to be released. Celise launched into another elaborate story about a famous director who had supposedly watched her scenes and expressed interest in meeting her. According to Celise, this could be her breakthrough role, the one that would launch her into real stardom. I might need to invest in some new headshots and coaching sessions, she added. These opportunities require investment. Whatever you need, my father said supportively. This could be the big one. Uncle Paul, who had been listening quietly, cleared his throat. You know, I have been curious about something. If acting jobs pay so little, as you mentioned earlier, how do you manage to help your parents financially while maintaining your lifestyle in Los Angeles? That city is notoriously expensive. A brief, uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Celise blinked several times, then laughed lightly. Good money management, Uncle Paul. I prioritize what matters. Family comes first, then career necessities, then personal expenses. Smart budgeting, my mother quickly added. Plus, Celise continued, gaining confidence, commercial work pays surprisingly well when you book national spots, and there are always side gigs in the industry. Must be quite a few side gigs, Uncle Paul persisted. Los Angeles rent alone would eat up most early career acting salaries. I found myself studying Celise's expression. For the first time that evening, she looked slightly uncomfortable, her usual confidence wavering. Celise is very resourceful, my father interjected. Always has been. We are just grateful for her help during tough times, my mother added, patting Celise's hand. Not everyone would support their parents the way she has. Something in me shifted. Perhaps it was the accumulation of years of invisibility, of contribution without acknowledgement. Perhaps it was the blatant falsehood being perpetuated at the table. Or perhaps it was simply that after 6 years and $80,000, I was tired of the charade. Celise, I said calmly, when did you start helping Mom and Dad financially? Celise looked startled by the direct question. Well, on and off for years now, whenever they needed it. So, around the time of Dad's early retirement, when the housing market crashed? I guess so, she said less certainly. Why are you interrogating me at dinner? I am not interrogating you. I am just trying to understand the timeline. My mother intervened. Auriemina, this is hardly appropriate dinner conversation. We were celebrating Celise's success. I am just curious, I persisted. Approximately how much have you contributed to the household expenses since Dad's retirement? Ballpark figure. The tension at the table was palpable now. My cousins exchanged glances, while Aunt Margaret leaned forward slightly, clearly interested in the answer. Celise flushed. I do not keep track of that kind of thing. When family needs help, you just help. You wouldn't understand because you've always been so calculating with money. I'm an analyst. Being precise with figures is literally my job. Well, not everything can be reduced to a spreadsheet, Auriemina. Some of us have emotional intelligence too. My mother narrowed her eyes at me. Why are you trying to diminish your sister's accomplishments? This is supposed to be a celebration. I am not diminishing anything. I am asking a simple question that no one seems able to answer. Celise pushed her plate away dramatically. You have always been jealous of me just because I pursued my passion instead of taking the safe route. Jealous? I repeated, feeling a strange calm settling over me. Of what exactly? Of my creativity, my willingness to take risks, of the fact that I am actually making it in a competitive industry while you push papers in an office. Celise, Gavin warned quietly, looking uncomfortable. But Celise was on a roll now. You have always resented the fact that I have actual talent while you just have a knack for numbers. Admit it. My mother chose that moment to deliver the blow that would change everything. She hissed across the table. You are just bitter because Celise succeeded and all you'll ever be is a number cruncher in a cubicle. The table fell silent. I felt everyone's eyes on me, waiting for my reaction. In that moment, 6 years of silent support, of denials and sacrifices, of being the invisible backbone of the family, while Celise received all the credit, it all crystallized into perfect clarity. I set down my napkin and looked directly at my mother. My voice was steady, almost conversational when I said, Then ask Celise to return the $80,000 I have given you since college. I am sure a successful actress would have no problem repaying that.
The silence that followed was absolute. My father's fork clattered onto his plate, his face draining of color. My mother froze, wine glass halfway to her lips. Aunt Margaret's mouth formed a perfect O of surprise, and Celise stared at me as if I had suddenly started speaking a foreign language. Gavin looked from Celise to me, confusion giving way to understanding as he processed what I had just revealed.
What are you talking about? Celise finally managed, her voice unnaturally high. The monthly transfers to Dad's account, the extra money for the refrigerator, the car repairs, the property taxes, the money that kept this house from foreclosure 6 years ago. That did not come from Celise. It came from me, every single month for 6 years. That is ridiculous, my mother said weakly. Why would you make up such a thing? Aunt Margaret leaned forward. Remy, is this true? Has Auriemina been supporting you? Of course not, my mother responded automatically. Celise has always helped us out when needed. I reached for my phone, opened my banking app, and slid it across the table to Uncle Paul. 6 years of transfers, $1,100 monthly at first, increasing to $1,500 over time, plus extras for emergencies and renovations. Uncle Paul studied the screen, then looked up at my father, his expression a mixture of disappointment and disbelief. Carson. My father could not meet his brother's gaze. He stared down at his plate, shoulders slumped in defeat. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees as the truth settled over the gathering. The silence stretched for what felt like minutes, but was probably only seconds. Finally, my mother broke it with a nervous laugh. This is absurd. Auriemina is obviously confused about something. I am not confused, I said calmly. I have been transferring money to Dad's account since his early retirement, the same account you used for household expenses, the money you have been crediting to Celise. I never said Celise was giving us money, my mother backpedaled. Perhaps you misunderstood. You literally just said it 15 minutes ago. You said, and I quote, "We are just grateful for her help during tough times." My father finally spoke, his voice barely audible. It is true. Auriemina has been helping us financially for several years now. Dad, Celise gasped, color draining from her face. The transfers come in regularly. I never told you it was Celise. Remy, you assumed that, and I did not correct you. My mother's face cycled through shock, embarrassment, and finally settled on anger. Why would you keep something like that from me? Because you never wanted to admit we needed help, especially not from Auriemina. It was always Celise who was supposed to be the successful one. Celise pushed back from the table abruptly. This is humiliating. You have all been lying to me. Her eyes filled with tears, making me think I was helping when I could barely make rent some months. No one asked you to claim credit for money you never sent, I pointed out. I never claimed anything, Celise shouted. Mom and Dad always said they were doing fine. Then occasionally they would thank me for my support, and I thought they were just being nice about the occasional check I sent for birthdays or Christmas. Occasional check, I repeated. Celise, they believe you have been supporting them substantially for years. That is why they praise you constantly and dismiss everything I do. They think you are the reason they still have this house. That is not true, my mother protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Celise turned to her parents. Have you been telling people I was supporting you financially? Neither answered, which was answer enough. I cannot believe this, Celise said, tears now streaming down her face. I am being ambushed at what was supposed to be my celebration dinner. Auriemina is obviously making this up to ruin my moment because she is jealous. I am not making anything up, I said, pulling up more bank records on my phone. Would you like to see 6 years of transfers? The dates correspond perfectly with the renovations, the new appliances, the property tax payments. This is a private family matter, my mother announced to the table at large. Perhaps we should discuss it another time. We are family too, Aunt Marguerite said firmly. And frankly, Remy, I have listened to you praise Celise's financial support for years while barely acknowledging Auriemina. If what she is saying is true, you have some serious explaining to do. It is true, my father confirmed, finally looking up. His eyes met mine briefly, filled with shame. Auriemina has been our primary support since my retirement package fell short. Without her, we would have lost the house years ago. Celise stood up suddenly. I need some air. She walked out of the dining room, footsteps heavy on the new hardwood floors. My mother glared at me, then at my father. I cannot believe you have done this. She threw her napkin on the table and followed Celise. An uncomfortable silence descended on the remaining dinner guests. My cousins stared at their plates while Uncle Paul and Aunt Marguerite exchanged meaningful glances. "How much, exactly?" Uncle Paul asked finally. "About $80,000 over 6 years, give or take." "And they never acknowledged it? Never thanked you?" Aunt Marguerite sounded incredulous. "They did not know it was me. Dad knew, but apparently never told Mom. I think he was too ashamed to admit how bad things were financially." Gavin, who had been silent through the revelation, finally spoke. "That is an incredible act of generosity, Auriemina. Most people would not do that without recognition." "It was not about recognition," I said, though that was not entirely true. "They're my parents. They needed help." Uncle Paul turned to my father. "Carson, you let your daughter support you for years while giving another daughter credit. Do you realize how hurtful that is?" My father nodded, eyes downcast. "I never meant it for it to happen this way. At first, it was just a temporary solution until I found consulting work. Then it became a regular thing, and the longer it went on, the harder it was to tell the truth." "And the lies about Celise?" Aunt Marguerite pressed. "She assumed," he said weakly. "Celise would send small gifts occasionally, and Remy built a narrative around it. I should have corrected her, but Celise has always been the favorite," I finished for him. "It was easier to let Mom believe her golden child was the successful one." More uncomfortable silence followed. I heard raised voices from the backyard where Celise and my mother were arguing. My cousins made awkward excuses and slipped out to the living room, leaving me with my father, Uncle Paul, Aunt Marguerite, and Gavin. "I am so sorry, Auriemina," my father said, his voice breaking. "You deserved better than this." The simple acknowledgement released something in me, emotions I had kept carefully controlled for years. I blinked rapidly, determined not to cry at the dinner table. Gavin, sensing my discomfort, changed the subject slightly. "What made you decide to help them secretly rather than openly?" "At first, I thought it would preserve their dignity. Then it became clear they preferred to believe the money came from Celise. It seemed easier to let them have that fiction than force them to acknowledge reality." "That was remarkably selfless," Gavin observed, "and remarkably unhealthy for everyone involved." "I am beginning to see that now," I admitted.
The back door slammed and my mother returned without Celise. She began clearing plates with aggressive movements, avoiding eye contact with everyone. "I think I should go," I said, standing up. "Running away now that you have ruined dinner," my mother snapped. Uncle Paul stood as well. "Remy, that is enough. Your daughter has supported you for years while you gave another daughter credit. You should be on your knees thanking her, not attacking her." My mother said nothing, but her hands trembled as she stacked dishes. "I will walk you out," Gavin offered, surprising me. We moved through the living room where my cousins were huddled, pretending not to have been listening to everything. Outside, the evening air was cool and refreshing after the heated tension of the dining room. "That was intense," Gavin said, as we walked toward my car. "For what it is worth, I think what you did was incredibly generous, even if the secrecy part was problematic." "Thank you," I said, surprised by his kindness. "Sorry you had to witness family drama on your first visit." "Actually, it was illuminating. Explains a lot about Celise." He hesitated, then added, "She always portrays herself as this hugely successful actress who helps her parents. Finding out none of that is true makes me reconsider some things." I unlocked my car, then turned to him. "She does have talent, and she did land that Netflix role on her own merits. The financial stuff is separate from that." He nodded. "That is gracious of you to say, considering everything. Listen, would it be okay if I got your number, just in case there is fallout from tonight? Celise might need some support from both of us." I gave him my number, touched by his concern despite the awkward circumstances. As I drove away, the emotional weight of the evening hit me all at once. 6 years of secrets had exploded in a single moment, changing family dynamics that had been established since childhood. There was no going back now, only forward into unknown territory. Halfway home, my phone rang. I answered on Bluetooth, expecting it to be Celise or my parents. "Auriemina, it is Gavin. Just checking that you are okay. You seemed pretty shaken when you left."
His unexpected concern broke something loose in me. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to cry openly about my family, about the years of invisibility, about the painful truth that had finally emerged. The next morning, I awoke to multiple missed calls from various family members. 2 from my father, 1 from Aunt Margaret, 3 from Celise, and surprisingly, none from my mother. I was procuring coffee when a knock at my apartment door startled me. Through the peephole, I saw my father standing in the hallway, looking as if he had aged a decade overnight. His clothes were rumpled, his hair uncombed. I opened the door, unsure what to say. "May I come in?" he asked quietly. I stepped aside, allowing him into my small but tidy apartment. He looked around, noticing the framed financial certifications on the wall, the bookshelf filled with economics texts and financial journals. "I've never been to your place before," he observed, the reality of that statement hanging between us. "Would you like coffee?" I offered, falling back on politeness in the absence of knowing what else to do. "Please." We sat at my small kitchen table, steam rising from our mugs, neither speaking immediately. Finally, my father broke the silence. "I need to tell you how deeply I am ashamed. Not just about the money, though that is bad enough, but about how we have treated you compared to Celise." I stared into my coffee. "Why did you never tell Mom the money came from me?" He sighed heavily. "It was complicated. At first, I was too ashamed to tell her how bad things really were. Then, when she assumed it was Celise, it just seemed easier. Your mother has always had certain expectations about how our family should appear to others. And Celise was always meant to be the successful one." "It was not that simple," he countered, then paused. "Or maybe it was. Celise's struggles have always been more visible, more dramatic. Your strength, your self-sufficiency, it made it too easy to take you for granted." He took a deep breath before continuing. "There is something else you do not know. 2 years ago, I had a minor heart attack." My head snapped up. "What? Why was I never told?" "We did not tell either of you girls. Your mother was afraid it would worry you unnecessarily. I was put on medication, told to reduce stress. The medical bills added another layer of financial pressure. You should have told me," I said, hurt by this additional secret. "I know that now. But your mother, she has this image of how a father should be. Strong, providing, never weak. Admitting we needed your financial help would have shattered that image. So you let her believe it was Celise." "Yes," he admitted. "It was wrong. I justified it by telling myself I was protecting everyone. Your mother's pride, Celise's self-image, your freedom from feeling obligated. But really, I was just protecting myself from having to face the truth." As painful as his words were, I appreciated his honesty. "Thank you for admitting that. It is the very least I can do." He reached across the table hesitantly, placing his hand over mine. "Auriemina, I need you to know something. I have always been proud of you, your intelligence, your work ethic, your kindness. I just never knew how to show it the way I did with Celise." Tears threatened again, but I held them back. "It hurt, Dad. Watching Celise get praised for things she never did, while my actual contributions were invisible." "I know," he said simply, "and I will spend however many years I have left trying to make it right, if you will let me." Our conversation was interrupted by my phone ringing. It was Celise. I answered, putting it on speaker so our father could hear. "How dare you ambush me like that? Do you have any idea how humiliating that was?" "Celise," I said calmly, "I did not plan to reveal all of that at dinner, but years of lies had finally reached a breaking point." "Lies? I never lied about anything. I had no idea Mom and Dad were telling people I was supporting them." "But you never corrected them when they thanked you for your financial support." There was a pause. I thought they were being nice about the birthday checks and Christmas money I sent. I had no idea they were talking about substantial amounts. My father spoke up. Celise, I am here with Auriemina, and what she is saying is true. Your mother and I allowed a fiction to develop about your financial support, when in reality it was Auriemina keeping us afloat all these years. Dad? Celise sounded surprised to hear him. So you have just been lying to my face for years, letting me believe I was actually helping you when I could barely help myself? Do you know how stupid that makes me feel? We never meant to hurt you, sweetheart, he began. Do not sweetheart me right now, Celise snapped. I have spent years feeling guilty that I could not do more to help you, while apparently Auriemina was sending thousands of dollars that you were attributing to me. Her anger was justified, I realized. She, too, had been caught in our parents' web of deception, albeit in a very different way than I had. Celise, I said, would it help if we all sat down together, maybe with a family therapist? There are clearly deeper issues here than just the money. To my surprise, she agreed immediately. Yes, because this is messed up on so many levels, and Mom is refusing to even discuss it. She's acting like nothing happened. That does not surprise me, our father said quietly. We arranged to meet the following weekend with the family therapist I researched and contacted that same day. Before hanging up, Celise said something unexpected. Auriemina? Thank you. Not for the money thing that was messed up to keep a secret, but for forcing the truth out. I feel like I've been living in some weird alternate reality. The road to healing would be long, but for the first time in years, it felt like we were finally walking it together in the light of truth rather than the shadows of comfortable lies.